This is the morning brief from the Economic Times.
From good old coffee houses of New Delhi and Kolkata that gave birth to many a revolution or renaissance, to Udupi joints of Bangalore, to filter coffee made at home with love and heirloom touches. To chains like Barista or Cafe Coffee Day or Costa, there's no better pick-me-up than the aroma of freshly brewed coffee prepared the way you want it, right? In a chai country like ours, the specialty coffee revolution is less than 25 years old. But a lot is indeed happening over a cuppa today. At one end of the spectrum, the global biggies, Starbucks, and on the other, specialist roasters, craft or artisanal chains like Blue Tokai, Third Wave Coffee, or Subko are becoming challengers. Backed by venture capital, they too are cooking up a storm in the coffee cup. Why else then would a non-coffee drinker like Kejo call his show Coffee with Karan? You get the picture. It's Tuesday, 30th of August. From the Economic Times, I'm your host, Arijit Barman, and you're listening to Coffeenomics, Business Behind the Beans. As venture capitalists bankroll hot young entrepreneurs and vibrant QSR formats, in this episode, we will have three of the hottest men behind the baristas and the bars to talk about the commerce of cafes and cappuccinos. First on the menu, Sushant Goel, co-founder and CEO of Third Wave Coffee, the latest to receive funding earlier this year from Westbridge and go big on growth across the country. Westbridge are the same guys that had previously backed Cafe Coffee Day.
Thanks for having me, Arijit. It's my pleasure to do this.
Sushant, first off, I want to understand, you're not the only one out there. On one end of the spectrum, you have the Starbucks. CCD Barista still exists. You have some of the foreign imports, Costas, tea leaf and coffee beans, etc. Then you have a Blue Tokai, you have a Subko, you have a Third Wave. I'm sure there are other regional players as well. What's your secret sauce, or shall I say, the secret latte behind the success of Third Wave?
Arijit, it's definitely a crowded space. Like you said, there are a number of homegrown Indian brands that have existed for a few years, a couple of them for a few decades. There has also been the entrant of international brands like Starbucks. There are new brands entering the market every year. We have recently seen the launch of Tim Hortons in Delhi. So yeah, it's definitely a crowded space. And I think the focus has been to deliver quality, consistent, fantastic experience for our customers from day one, regardless of whether it's our first cafe or our 80th cafe, which we have just recently opened up. And I think that's been the secret sauce of our success in scaling from one city to 8 cities, and really thrilled to be able to differentiate in this market, continuously show that you can build a truly global brand out of India.
No doubt, correct me if I'm wrong, from outside in, it seems yours is a cafe model. So much like retail, location, location, location. That's key. But real estate costs, arguably in any metro, especially in NCR, Mumbai, become the single largest expense line item and weighs down the unit economics. How do you balance that?
No, you're absolutely right. We're a QSR coffee chain, and our business is as much about real estate as it is about product. And I think it's a blend of getting, the right location at the right price. But the way we see it balancing out in our current economics is that we see demand to be a lot higher than some of the other cities where real estate cost is lower. We also see that the willingness for the customer to pay a slightly higher price point for access and convenience is definitely something that we have been able to balance out. I think from day one, my focus and my talk to the company has always been we need to build a tremendous consumer brand with a lot of love, but a financial powerhouse as well. So we are very cognizant of real estate costs in India, which are definitely on the higher end, especially in the cities that you mentioned. But at the same time, we're able to balance it out with sort of hard negotiation, as well as be able to get the right kind of consumer demand through our doors such that the economics make sense.
Okay, because I want to understand the pricing aspect, which is a follow-up question, which is Starbucks, they operate at the 250 to 300 price point. Are you saying that chains such as Third Wave can demand a premium to that, or your sweet spot is actually 150 to 200 range and you would rather play on volume? Because at the end of the day, if you are looking at a premium experience which is, if I can draw a parallel, like a luxury kind of a brand, Indians are extremely price conscious.
Absolutely. I mean, I think more than being price conscious, I think value for money is very important.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA, right? We all grew up in households where our parents taught us the value for money. And, Arijit, we don't think about it as a 200 or 250 rupee price point when it comes to our product. We actually look at the average basket value. So it's not just the coffee value, but it's what you pair with the coffee, whether it's food, it's the size of the check that really matters, right? In our business, we call it average order value. And essentially, we need to have a critical average order value with the number of bills that we do a day for the economics to work out at a store. We have taken a varied look at pricing across markets. In some markets, we can command something like the international players offer. And in some markets, we choose to be slightly lower and have higher demand in those markets.
Now, you've grown dramatically after the capital infusion that happened from Westbridge. It's a marquee name, no doubt. Let me ask you this point blank. Are you India's Kopi Kenangan?
We're India's third wave, Arijit. I think it's hard to sort of say we are India's Kopi Kenangan, or we've been compared to a lot of competitors, a lot of international players. Like you said, we have taken the route of doing a offline brand, and offline means, high capex at the store level. It means a lot of early costs before you can distribute to the customer, right? Correct. So we definitely think that that is the way India will consume coffee, out of home. And in some cases, of course, over a period of time, we would like to see that in home and at office too. But a large part of it happens out of home. And we would like to be the brand of choice for those consumers. But I would not go to say that we're India's answer or India's Kopi Kenangan. We're both startups, right? And the markets operate very differently. Indonesia is a very different iced coffee market. India has been touted as a chai market always, right? I think any sort of investor meeting I would pick up in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, apart from a few, have always said it's a chai market. How do you sell coffee in a chai market? We have definitely sort of brought a blend of both Western and Indian flavors in our menu. And I'm sure sort of Kopi and other brands in Indonesia are doing the same, right?
So you would say you're a cafe first, products company later.
We're a cafe first. It's backed by a very strong product. Our coffee is and food is a product that people consume. Of course, it's backed by service, and we have a very interesting technology play that we have been working through and working on over the last couple of years, and you'll see some of that emerge in the next couple of quarters. But we're definitely cafe QSR first before sort of just a pure play coffee player that distributes in offices or through online means.
Yeah. Now, you talked about Indonesia and its love for ice cafes. Now, if we look at Starbucks, I mean, the biggest of them all, their mix seems to be 75% beverage, 25% food. Of that 75%, 50% or half of the sales come from sweeter beverages, iced coffees, frappuccinos, where you add a lot of hazelnut syrup or that syrup or choco chips, etc., etc. literally, I mean, I often think whether I entered a dessert shop or a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Yours, clearly, coffee is at the center of your story, right?
Yeah.
Not sweet beverages.
Yeah.
But that also puts a lot of people in a bind because, that's where the growth is. So if you focus on coffee for the adults, you and I seem to be a minority. Kids or many adults seem to love that sugar rush, that, huge creamy beverage that you get. How do you balance both?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, excellent question. You obviously understand the market very well. We definitely, like you said, want to be coffee first. Of course, an international player like Starbucks has its range of beverages, and if you walk into a third wave, Arijit, you'll be surprised. But we do too, right? And
Yeah.
of course, a lot of customers come to us because we probably have the best espresso, the best cappuccino, the best latte, and we pride ourselves on that. But we have taken sort of painful steps to developing that, and some compromises and choices we have made to be able to continuously deliver that even at scale. But at the same time, we're not in the business of alienating customers, right? And I think we're definitely spending a lot of time now trying to understand what does the teenage population or what does the younger population want on a menu, and we would like to see them as third wave customers.
And would you say that of the multiple cities that you are currently in, you are heaviest in Bangalore in terms of footprint and density wise, and then comes NCR, Bombay, and other cities. So you're Bangalore first.
Yeah. We started the business here in 2017. We grew very organically for the first few years. We now have 40 plus stores in Bangalore. I think the true testament of being a brand is when you can open up at the airport.
You also said, investors keep asking you about tea, India and its love for chai, right?
Mhm.
Now, I also see a player like a Chayos or a Chai Time or some of the other regional players expanding. Aren't you all fighting for the same wallet? So it's a fragmented market amongst artisanal and or craft coffee makers and roasters, but also there are tea chains or the tea houses that are expanding.
Yeah, no, so Arjit, I think chai and coffee are two different need states. And I think the consumer is definitely who's going to want a chai is not coming into your store for a cup of coffee, right? I think they are sort of two very different products. The kind of food pairings that you see with chai are very different from the food pairings that you see with sort of coffee, right? I wouldn't say that we're competing for the same wallet share. We're definitely competing for the same wallet share when it comes to the coffee, right? The bunch of the coffee players that you mentioned are competing, but chai and coffee are sort of two different habits.
Now that you've taken institutional capital, people would argue you've jumped right onto the treadmill. Historically, the sector, F&B or coffee or tea chains, have made negligible returns for their investors, including CCD, including baristas who've had a long runway, right?
Yeah.
It's early days for players like you.
Yeah.
But if you look purely at history, it's been checkered at best. How do you convince your investors bet on us, we'll give you the returns that you would want?
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of factors, right? And I wouldn't sort of pinpoint and say there is one reason. There are a myriad number of reasons why some of the existing players have not been able to sort of scale or sustain the scale that they hit, right? But I think the way we structure ourselves as an organization, the corporate governance that we have, the kind of standards that we are setting for ourselves is unlike sort of any player that has emerged in this space. But right from the way we select real estate to the way we negotiate our rental deals to the amount we invest in our partners, right? And when I say partners, these are our store partners who serve customers in their training, in their upskilling. We think that is the real reason why over a period of time we can maintain success and quality, right? This business really boils down to quality. And I think building a financially stable, really great brand in this country is the time is now, right? The next 10 years, you see very high disposable incomes, right? And you've seen this in terms of some of the other categories, right? Fitness has become a sort of major category, right? And whenever a sort of economy matures, you see typically sort of fitness, coffee, some of these categories becoming mainstream categories. And therefore, we think sort of the next decade really belongs to some of these categories.
Now, people would argue that with Pret a Manger coming into India with Reliance, that's the joker in the pack. They are a sandwich on the go brand, but in India, they will tweak fast and come at all of you hard. And they have the pricing power. Then would you say the gloves are off and you're in it for a long battle ahead?
Arijit, even before Pret a Manger, I would say that the gloves are already off, right? Like you said, there are a bunch of players in this space competing for the wallet share of the consumer. So I think, the gloves are already off. We're in for a sort of hard battle across some of the existing cities that we're in and in some of the new cities that we will open. But we will have to wait and see, how they sort of succeed in this market. It's a very heterogeneous market, Arijit. I think from Delhi to Bombay to Bangalore, some of our learnings around just what the consumer wants, what do they look for, is not a one size sort of fits all model, right? So you'll need sort of tweaking in order to sort of conquer these cities, and getting the right real estate in the country is not easy, right? So it'll take them some time to scale as well. But of course, they have the sort of capital as well as the DNA to be able to do so.
Like Sushant, Matt Chitharanjan, co-founder and CEO at Blue Tokai Coffee Roasters, is also seeking institutional funding and has been on the road looking to raise fresh round of external capital. For many, what Matt and his wife Namrata Asthana has been doing since 2012 is nothing short of trend-setting.
Without the advent of Blue Tokai and the gumption it took to create an entire brand and a program and scale that brand and program with the notion of traceable coffee, I don't think a brand like Subko could have even seen the light of day. Matt's done a huge service to Indian coffee. So that's sort of how I ended up in Bombay, and basically that sort of sparked one additional layer to the whole thing, which was I envisioned it the experiential lens of traceable agriculture that would be rooted in the subcontinent if we could create a craft experience out of it. Coffee and bread became a calling for what would end up being, called Subko.
That's Rahul Reddy, founder at Subko Specialty Coffee Roasters, a forensic expert cum consultant turned coffeepreneur. Rahul clearly is a fanboy, and like Matt, after working in America, he too became nuts over Arabica and Robusta, Excelsa and Liberica, the four basic beans that matter to anyone who has anything to do with the business of coffee. We have two very exciting guests joining the ET podcast, The Morning Brief. Matt Chitharanjan, co-founder at Blue Tokai Coffee Roasters. Rahul Reddy, founder at Subko Specialty Coffee Roasters. Matt, Rahul, thanks so much for taking time out and joining The Morning Brief.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arijit, for inviting me, and great to be on with Matt. It's an honor.
So, Matt, these craft chains such as yours or artisanal chains, the moot point or the soul of the brand is in the fact that you believe in fair trade. It is not mass industrial scale. That's the difference.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the differences. For us, when we started, there was no idea of good quality Indian coffee, despite the fact that there were estates in India who were producing coffee that could be served on the cafe menu anywhere in the world. Within the country, they weren't really being known and recognized. So we really wanted to find those estates, highlight them, tell their story, and connect consumers back to the source of where this coffee was being grown. So when 10 years ago when we had started, this idea of traceable coffee, roasted well, roasted fresh, that wasn't really being practiced, and people weren't even aware of that. So putting in place different methods and ways to reach consumers, to explain to them, why is it important to highlight the farms? What are they doing at the farm level that's producing this quality of coffee? How do you roast coffee? How do you roast it in a way that really creates a difference in terms of the flavors that are coming out of it? That was a big focus for us as well when we started, is on the education aspect.
What is traceable coffee?
To us, traceable coffee is knowing exactly where that coffee comes from and who produced it. And in many cases, it goes beyond just the farm and the location. Different areas of the farm produce different species of Arabica, different species of Robusta. They have different soil conditions that ultimately lead to different flavors. So having traceability to even a level within the farm is also important to us.
Understood. And Rahul, if you wear your development economist hat, one is, of course, the species and where it's growing in a farm, as Matt said. Is the other reason why for brands like you, all this information is important or crucial is because of the labor practices and giving it back to the community?
In order for those planters, farmers with teams working extremely, hard months through the year, but then, a very, very hard sort of harvest season with immense labor requirements, to not be treated as a commodity process and to actually take even more skill, even more labor, even more training. I believe the feedback loop I'm referring to encourage this sort of behavior at the plantation level is one where the premium can be ostensibly passed along to people because they see a cultural value, an ethical value. So brands, like ours, are tasked with, I think what Matt said is very critical there. At the end, what is the communication structure being utilized to tell people that these farmers will produce delicious, amazing coffee for us to provide to you, if you, in the end of the day, are willing to take that little bit of an extra risk and invest a little bit more in these products.
Understood. But Rahul, what you are saying or what Matt's saying, now others are also saying the same. I mean, in the saying that there are many such chains which are coming up who's trying to say the same story, the same narrative. Isn't the market therefore getting overcrowded? For you, for example, what would be your key differentiator? What's that X factor for Subko?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer in terms of the market crowding. I think from Subko's point of view, there's two key elements, I think, that at least the aspiration is there for us to highlight. The first is that we're a very design-driven, experiential coffee brand. Like, how tactile would it be? What would be the native and indigenous ingredients in the visual understanding of what that brand stood for? So we've taken a very design-centric approach. Would be one piece. The second for us is that we do have two really key verticals at Subko. We of course are specialty coffee roasters. It's a segment that is certainly prominent in many other places in the world. I think it's a little less prominent, or it has been until date, in India. But basically that means exceptionally high point scoring coffee. And then we're also a craft bakehouse, and so really that for us that really is a focus on sort of experimental laminated doughs, aka croissants, as well as sourdough bread.
And Matt, what would you say would be Blue Tokai's secret sauce? What would that be? That it's coffee at the center stage, or it's the experience? It's
yeah. For us, it's very much coffee focused. Our goal is to make great tasting Indian coffee as accessible as possible. We try to put it at a price point that's significantly cheaper than a Starbucks, so that it can appeal to a wider audience. We try to have products that kind of bridge the gap between having instant coffee at home versus having to have all kinds of equipment. So how do you bring convenience and pair that with the quality of specialty coffee? So for us, the focus is really on trying to get as many people as possible to drink better quality Indian coffee.
Correct. And when you touched upon pricing, so let me break it down. I believe so for Starbucks, it's the 250 to 300 rupees price point. So would you say the others are actually playing on the 150 to 200 price point range?
I think even within all of us, there's a wide variety. I think very, very few people would be at the 150 level. I think that's more of a real commodity brands would be. But I think sort of this around 200 rupees, maybe 220, 230, going down to 180 is where most of the other people are. Okay.
The answer that I would have to that, Arijit, is yes, of course. I mean, it's undeniable, the sort of lack of elasticity that seems to be present in many sort of quote unquote consumers in urban India. our sort of methodology, not with the explicit purpose of retaining customers or whatever, but it's actually just at the heart of the brand, is constant innovation. So for one thing that's interesting is we don't actually currently we don't sell any retail products that are blends. What that means is there's constant rotation and similar but diverse flavor experiences that are constantly there, even from the same plantation. So I think these elements are really critical to kind of getting people to kind of reinvest their time, energy, and ultimately money into brands that, like ourselves, who are not in the most accessible segment.
Understood. And Matt, innovations could also mean, as I've seen, players like Sleepy Owl tying up with ice cream brands, and you have a co-branded ice cream. Similarly, I'm sure Blue Tokai must be also doing such collabs.
Yeah, we've done. I think it's a good way of having sort of cross-pollination of different customer bases. So we've also done tie-ups with ice cream companies, with chocolate companies, with even exercise protein companies, with beauty companies. So I think it's just about finding kind of like-minded brands who sort of have similar thinking, and it's a good way to sort of expand your brand reach.
It's great if you can make them open their purse strings. But Matt, the sector overall, F&B, coffee, tea chains, have made negligible money for its investors. Looking at the history, it's been pretty challenging and checkered. Isn't that a problem as you scale up, as you look to raise more money?
Yeah, I encounter this a lot. I feel like it's just very short-sighted to think that just because it's never been done in the past doesn't mean it can't be done in the future. I totally understand that CCD and Barista and even some of the international chains like Costa and CBTL haven't been able to scale up, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. And I think the real trend that people are missing is that as countries grow, coffee consumption grows significantly. And there seems to be a tipping point in income level that once that country reaches that point, coffee just explodes. We've seen it in other coffee growing countries. Indonesia reached that income level, and from there, coffee just took off. I feel that India is very close to that level, if not already reached it. And so we're at the start of a great phase for consumers and for companies and for coffee in general in India. And I think it's very hard for as an investor, it's all about timing, right? So they don't want to be the ones who maybe come in too early, then you won't make money. But at the same time, if you come in too late, it'll also be very difficult to make money.
Yeah.
So
this is that sweet spot.
Here. Yeah.
Okay, but Rahul, you've let me go back to your consulting days or your days as an economist. Matt also did economics, I read somewhere. Now let's talk about retail. Now, at what stage does each one of you say make money at an EBITDA level? Except for specific pockets of apparel retail, most models take a very, very long time to make money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way that I would answer that is we do have our sort of own methodology on this. We're nowhere near the scale that Matt has built his company into at this stage. But we do I think one to two things differently. So first, we only retail our products currently. We don't use any third party. Essentially keep all of the margins within the company itself. So we only sell through our e-commerce platform, which is Shopify. That we built a store on. So we've done that. And then in a similar vein, one thing that's been really challenging for me to do is not just because of the financial implications, although that's part of it for sure. We've actually chosen to not vend our retail products as of today on sort of the most prominent aggregating platforms in India. So Zomato, Swiggy, these platforms don't currently have Subko listed on them.
Interesting. Matt, you've been around for long, and let me so therefore ask you this, that unit economics in between had turned favorable due to lower rentals and lower talent costs. COVID played a role in that. However, it appears that in the last 2 quarters, costs are inching up once again. Isn't that a big headache?
Yeah, actually, there was only a very brief period during COVID where rentals came down. But actually, within a year of the lockdown, rentals were back to pre-COVID levels, and now are actually what we see are higher than they were pre-COVID. I think real estate is the one of the keys to having a positive unit economics at the cafe, and I think where a lot of the brands go wrong is that they either expand too fast and then have to, as a result of that, take bad bets on locations, or have store formats that don't make sense for the market that they're operating in. So either you open a large location with a very high capex and fit out cost, and the footfalls don't justify that. So I think it's really important to make sure that your rental to sales ratio is very well thought out and monitored carefully, and also look at the cost that you're putting into the store, and does that make sense from a payback perspective.
So are you like Subko also experimenting with various formats like shop in shop, or is it just standalone cafes for you?
So we do currently have shop-in-shop formats and kiosks and cloud kitchens, but these were all experiments that have been happened over years. Now for us, we realize the sweet spot is really kind of these 800 to 1,200 square foot cafes, because the economics of that are very favorable. They have the potential to do 20 to 35 lakhs of business a month, where you can get the rent to revenue ratio down to the low teens, and at the same time, when you operate these smaller formats, the operational intensity is nearly the same as it is in opening up a large location. So for 3 kiosks would do the same business as 1 cafe. It's much easier from an operations perspective to just manage that 1 cafe than managing three kiosks to get the same revenue and ultimately EBITDA from that.
So you're not obsessed about location. It has to be high street. It has to be bang in the middle of a mall. It has to be, in the best location of a CBD.
No, actually, we shy away from those locations because and there, so in a cafe format, it's not like, I don't see it as possible that a cafe is going to do 1 crore of business a month. And if you start taking the best location within a particular market, that rental is going to be 10 lakhs. I don't see the economics ever working out in that situation. And for us as a brand, and I think Subko definitely has that, we've demonstrated an ability to pull people from off to slightly off prime locations within a micro market.
Interesting. We're really running out of time. So the last question, Matt, that I have for you is, Rahul talked about, the things that he's doing to make, unit economics work. Location's one aspect, and you also touched upon it. But he said about, e-commerce, choosing the platforms, not being on Zomato and Swiggy because they take away a lot of margins. For Blue Tokai, coffee is at the heart and soul of it. How much of your sales are from the products itself, by selling powder and beans? And if I'm not wrong, you are on all the e-commerce platforms, on the delivery platforms. So, both e-commerce and in-shop purchase, how much of the sales is from the real product itself?
Yeah. So at an overall cafe level, 20% of the sales come from the packaged coffee products. For us, actually, we see delivery as a important channel. I feel that convenience aspect is very important. Even if I look at my own behavior, I order regularly from the outlets where I have access to all of the coffee and all of the equipment at home. And so that's I think a behavior change that we've seen that was kind of started with COVID, but is really here to stay. We've seen delivery sales increase almost every month because just based on that convenience aspect.
My take. World over, the craft coffee revolution is called the third wave. Perhaps a take on Starbucks' famous third place credentials, a comfort zone between home and office. With curated customer experiences, bespoke F&B, the aim is to create a new place for each of the brand. Perhaps even have focused micro-market strategies. And why not? When Beijing alone has 1,000 Starbucks, that's just one city. In all of India, Starbucks and its joint venture partner Tata's have managed to open only 268 outlets across 25 cities after more than a decade of operations. But the business has finally been able to deliver break-even at an operating profit level before depreciation and amortization, meaning EBITDA. Even as there is enough runway for growth and food and beverages occupy the largest share of our wallets that all the other big chains, big and small, are pouring over, the key issue will be finding the right blend of profitable growth. You grow fast, you burn cash. You become bottom line obsessed, then store rollouts ain't going to happen in a hurry. As Sushant and Matt said, we have reached the important tipping point for coffee to see scorching growth over the next 10 to 15 years. But then again, retail is never easy and it's all about hard execution. Remember, Starbucks openly says it's a well-oiled logistics and supply chain business first and a coffee chain later. So would Blue Tokai cafes be as efficient in Kanpur as they are at Kemp's Corner in Mumbai? Or will Subko Sourdoughs sell in Srinagar enough to make it really matter? That's where the commerce behind these craft coffee chains will make the difference. Thank you, Sushant, Matt, and Rahul. Deeply appreciate. You have been listening to Coffeenomics, Business Behind the Beans with me, Arijit Barman, your host on The Morning Brief. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursdays, and Friday. If you like this episode, please make sure to share it on your social media handles. Thank you for listening and have a great week ahead. This episode was produced by Sumit Pandey from The Economic Times and Swati Joshi from Awaz. Sound editors Rajas Nayak and Indranil Bhattacharjee from The Economic Times. Executive producers Anupriya Bahadur and yours truly from The Economic Times. Do tune in to ET Play, our latest platform for all audio content, including The Morning Brief. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.